Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and instead of writing up a really long and decidedly boring article about where Flashpoint has been going for the last 2 months, I figured it would be better to just demonstrate it. Because why not? It would legitimately just work a hell of a lot better because there's only been one major change to the underlying platform of Flashpoint in the last couple of months, and that would be the GameZip system. So, here we are in the Flashpoint directory, and you might notice that something has changed if you really pay attention to these things, and that's legacy, because we now have a new server system. It runs via QEMU, and it allows us to do what we call GameZips. And thankfully, we have a couple here to demonstrate. So these are GameZips. Now, for those of you who don't know, the way Flashpoint would normally work is that we have this gigantic list of directories and all of the individual files underneath these directories. For example, let's say Armor Games would need to be extracted in their own way. And this can turn out to be a real problem when we talk about, say, a HTML5 game, for example, where there are a bunch of files all separate from each other. And as you can see, 482 individual files. It takes a long time to copy that many files from, say, drive to drive or from a gigantic 7-zip to, let's say, just a hard drive in general, right? But how bad has this problem really gotten over the past few, months? Well, this is WizTree that has clocked in directly into HTDocs from the current working build. And this is with, a few games already zipped. We have 1,700,000 unique files in HTDocs as it stands right now. Imagine doing anything 1.7 million times, and you can understand why this is starting to become a bit of a problem. When you go to extract something like, say, the full version of Flashpoint Ultimate, it means that every individual one of those files is going to have to be written to the hard drive, and then just... that's all I got for you. Every single time. You have to deal with every one of these individual files, and it can take forever. It's one of the main reasons that extracting Flashpoint takes such a long time for some people, because when you're extracting it onto a slower hard drive that needs to account for every individual file, you get this crap. So, yeah, we've been working on trying to deal with this for quite some time. And as a result, we've come up with the GameZip system, and we haven't applied this on a mass level across every single game in the system, right? Because, well, we can't really do that. The problem is that with all of these games laid out like this, the way they are... Why did my phone just go off? The way that it's all set up is that we don't actually keep records of what games affect what, and multiple games are affected by the same files. So we have to do these one by one. But I'm just going to very quickly look up a game that's not pornographic that I can look at as an example. Because, strangely enough, there's a fair few of them there. Dollmaker, F1D. We'll just sort these by name, because these are sorted by Flashpoint ID. That determines how they're going to be loaded in the future. So if we have a look at this, we can see that there are an absolute ton of files in here. We can actually see just how many. Files, not 187, we're not doing the entire archive. So if we pull back up to here and hit info, there we go, 25,000 files. Compressed down to one zip file, and not to mention we can actually apply compression to that too, so we've actually cut 30 megs off the game size. So hopefully this will end up with a lower extracted size, but how does it actually work when we come to Flashpoint itself? This is not how it's going to be implemented in the final version. This is just a workaround until we get a new version of the launcher in with a few new tricks that we can use to optimize the process. But right now, we need to find Dollmaker. I believe this is it. There we go. And as we can see, when we launch it, there is a new mount command, which will automatically take this zip and mount it into the server so that it can read from the zip itself. It's going to be kind of hard to actually show this off properly. But if we hit the logs tab once the game has finished being mounted, and the mounting time is very quick. Thankfully, we had a couple of ways of taking care of this originally, but they were quite slow. But we managed to optimize it so that we actually just read straight from the zip on the hard drive. We don't have to actively mount it into RAM or read it for its files every time we need to have a look at it. But if we scroll back up to the files that it's decided to load here, just ignore that. So, as we can see, it's loading the files just as if it was being loaded from htdocs itself via the logs. And this does work. So we can go and make a doll. And we can load in all of the individual parts here. And it loads pretty smoothly. Like, it's mostly instant. There's not that much of a delay in loading individual files. It works just fine, basically. We'll just hit randomize a few more times. See? There we go. It all loads in relatively smoothly. We've done this with a fair few games so far. There's a few that I'm not going to show off on YouTube because they might be pornographic and I can't actively show that to you. But there's a few, let's say Family Guy Yourself. Let me just get the idea of that real quick. Starts with 6C0. It'll be here somewhere, I know it is. 158 meg, how many files? 35,000. One of my personal favorites is the Wonder FL archive. And this is what we can use to actually demonstrate something completely different. Because the Wonder FL archive, 617. We don't actually have certain things working in the GameZips right now. Certain database games and what have you just generally have trouble running in the zips. However, we are working on this. This might change in the future. This is just for this video. But this one here, 45,000 files. And if we open the directory here, we can see what's been left behind in what we call the legacy directory, which is just what htdocs is right now. And as you can see, we've merely left behind, what, 24 items? So compressing 45,000 into one file is still an absolutely massive save. And it also lets us demonstrate, if I just open up the Wonder FL archive, how these two technologies work together. Because it will load files from the GameZip first, and if there are files that it can't find in the GameZip, it will load them from the legacy htdocs. They work together. So we can have files in the zips and files outside of the zips just fine, and they'll work together without much issue. This is a relatively big one, so it takes a while to mount. There's not that much we can do about that, but once it does, we have logs. We have both files loading from htdocs and files loading from the GameZip together like they were never particularly separate to begin with. Wonder FL is great, and I'm so happy that it's going to be a lot easier to access now, because one of the big things about the way that we're building GameZips right now is that there are some games, and I believe that, the Wonder FL archive is one of them, is actually broken in Infinity, because due to the way that Infinity downloads and executes files, we aren't able to run certain games because their code just doesn't work with the version of the server that we're using, because there's something missing, or that we have to download an absolutely massive database and we can't convince the router to let us do that. However, we're hoping by the time that version 9.0 or 10.0, whatever the hell we're going to call it, it's currently called 9.0, we're wondering whatever the hell this version is when it comes out, we're hoping that we'll be able to make it so that we can download GameZips, extract them, and then run them in the same way that we do the ultimate version, finger quotes, where we can extract, not even extract, we can just run them straight from the zip, just as if they were a regular single file game. And that's going to be the biggest benefit of them all. Well, not of them all, obviously, but it's going to be one of the biggest benefits. Letting games that previously didn't work in Infinity work in Infinity, just because you only need to download one zip file and then mount that into the server, and then it should just hopefully work. Hopefully. Again, none of this actually works yet. We haven't managed to successfully test this because we've just been working on getting the GameZip system itself in general working. But we're hoping that's the way it's going to work, because this server will work the same way. It'll just grab files from the server when it needs to, but if it comes across a game that needs a GameZip, it'll be like, hey, do you want to download this GameZip? It'll be 2.3 gig, it'll be 1 gig, it'll be 750 meg. You'll just download it, mount it, and then you can run it. And of course, let's just say Bowman, for example. This is a game that doesn't have a mount yet. We can just open that up. And see, doesn't mount, just loads via Flash Player like it normally does, and it just loads via Legacy HT docs. So the games that aren't converted will still work, hopefully, as they do. And of course, if for some reason there's some freak accident of a game that just refuses to work in 9 that works in 8.2, well, we have 8.2 still. We're going to be keeping around 8.2 for this particular purpose. So, yeah, that's the major change right now. We're zipping games up as we can, and we are compressing games as we can go. And just to demonstrate, we're actually going to do a zip live here on camera. So, here is one of the major games that we're working with here. This is the Daily Snoop, a hidden object game. It's got 55,000 files split into 3,000 different folders. So 58,000 individual writes is pretty damn big. And thankfully, we can determine that the Daily Snoop, via just booting it up and looking at its logs, we can determine that the absolute majority of it is in this one directory. Shockwave content, the Daily Snoop, a hidden object game. So, we can take this folder, shockwave.com, move that to the side so I can see what I'm doing. Content, the Daily Snoop. We can, actually, it's probably best that I close Flashpoint for this. So, we'll take this folder and we'll move it to my curations directory. Don't mind everything that's there right now. We'll move that to www.shockwave.com, content, the Daily Snoop. Then we'll pop this into its own folder, so we'll call it Daily Snoop. And just to make sure I don't screw this up on camera and lose 55,000 files, we're just going to stick that directly into a zip file, just to be safe. So I'll go over how the rest of this system works while we wait for that to compress. So in the utilities folder down here, we have what's called BlueZip. And this BlueZip is what we use to convert games to the new format. We are actually using TorrentZip for this. And a lot of people are going to be very happy to hear that, because TorrentZip is a good way to verify that the files have not been changed when they've been originally made. So when this is done compressing, which is taking a very long time, then again, it's 50,000 files. You can't be surprised, can you? So what we do is we drag and drop this onto Convert, and once it does that, it will automatically compress it using TorrentZip, and then drop it directly into the games folder right here, and then go and edit the database of the Daily Snoop, so that the database entry of the Daily Snoop for Flashpoint, so that when we open it back up, it'll just automatically be there. Hell, I could leave Flashpoint open as I'm doing this, and then just go to that, click away from the entry, click on, and it'll have automatically updated with the new entry. But again, we'll take this slowly. We'll make sure that this works properly. Right, I almost forgot. We're actually going to have to go and get the Daily Snoop's ID for this, but thankfully that's not actually that big of a deal. Snoop. The Daily Snoop. Right-click and copy the game UUID. Keep the curations window and this window open. Utilities. BlueZip. Drag onto Convert. And just to show you that I'm not screwing around, there's no mount option here right now. Now if we just paste this here and press Enter. This is probably going to take a little bit of time because, again, 50,000 files, but there you go. Updating the Daily Snoop, a hidden object game. And there we are. We're done. That was a couple of minutes longer than I was expecting, but no problem. I can always edit that out. So if we head back up to the games section and sort by date modified now, we can see that we've got a brand new 1 gigabyte file with 55,000 files in it and 3,000 folders. And we can just hit enter. Click on and click off, and there's our mount. Wait for the zip to mount. Head over to the logs just while we're waiting. I played the Wonder FL archive just fine. I wonder what the deal is. Let's try that again. Hopefully this time I might get off its ass. Yeah, there we go. Couldn't tell you what happened the first time, but look at that. We've turned 50,000 files into one, which should hopefully help out massively. Look, we've got 50k files off at the count. And we're going to do it again. And we're going to do it a few more times until we have at least a much more reasonable file count going on. Because, well, we need to have a more reasonable file count going on. But yes, that was a look at the GameZip system. Bit weird that it didn't work the first time I tried with the Daily Snoop, but yes. And we can also run, like, multiple GameZip games at a time. So let's try running the Wonder FL archive. And now, back to the Flashpoint launcher, let's run the Daily Snoop again. It was already mounted in memory, so it was able to do that a lot faster. But yeah, we've got two GameZip games running side by side. Oh dear. Okay, it looks like that's broken. Shit. Oh no. Oh, I'm going to have to figure that one out, aren't I? But it's still, the GameZip system is working for some things. Let's see, do we have peanuts? Yay. I'm going to have to go figure that out now, aren't I? I don't want Wonder FL to be broken. God damn it. Right, but there's, of course, still more going on with Flashpoint, as we all know. I do keep the changelog mostly. Yeah, mostly. Let's not pretend that I keep this 100% up to date. But I do keep the changelog mostly up to date with things like pending fixes. So let's have a look at that real quick just before we end this video off. We've got everything from game fixes. Actually, I should probably do the what I usually do here and sort these by alphabetical order. There we go. So we've got new Newgrounds versions, new older versions, new translations, 50 Vietnamese translated alternate apps. We've got Blob, apparently. Why is that there? We've got some game fixes, including a couple of embarrassing ones, like Territory War and Interactive Buddy. I don't know how I managed to break those, but they were broken, so those are going to be fixed. A few annoying bug fixes, some fixed games, a bunch of duplicates are now gone, and that some of those are kind of my fault, mainly because of how curation has been delayed while I've been trying to get GameZips off the ground. We've also got some updates, including the Arcane Online games. They've been updated to have their launches work properly and their saves and what have you. Same thing with the Steppenwolf games, some updated logos, and hundreds of assorted metadata fixes. We are not kidding. There has been a lot of them going through recently. And we've also got a bunch of new games and the usual set of things as well. So I'm just going to use my changes script to generate us a new set of changed games. And I can give you an idea of just how much in the way of new stuff is in this new version so far. And this isn't the end of it. We're going to be continuing on adding curations through November. Right now there's about 10,000 new games, if you count these ones and the ones that are waiting to go in, and a few thousand animations. So, we're working on it. We really are. Flashpoint 9 is going to be absolutely massive, and we want nothing but the best for it, considering it's going to be coming out around the time that Flash in general is due to die. Not Flashpoint, just Flash. Nevertheless, right now, we've got more work to do, and I'm going to have to go and figure out what the hell is wrong with Wonder FL, but for now, this has been Blue Maxima. I hope you enjoyed this little look at the future of Flashpoint, and when this list is finished off, I'll see you all next time.